So the Suicide Squad is now on HBO Max and in your local cinema if you can get to it, and I have some thoughts on it. So the Suicide Squad is directed by James Gunn, who last time we met him was in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and this film picks up with the Suicide Squad team having to infiltrate an island that is run by a dictator, and they have to go into it to try to find Project Starfish, a project that they don't exactly know the full origins of until it's almost too late, and they find along the way that they have a lot in common with each other. Now, if you know me and my history with the original Suicide Squad, I did not like this movie. My expectations for this movie were actually pretty low, considering the fact that the original Suicide Squad was just so poorly done. And I understand part of it is due to the fact that Warner Brothers and the trailer house that they sent the film to basically edited the crap out of the original movie and just really just tore it apart. Like, there's no characters in that movie. The needle drops were just so badly done. Like, the only film comparable to it is, like, Cruella de Vil in Cruella, but, like, the original Suicide Squad was just so badly done, so badly edited, and it boggled my mind that Warner Brothers let this movie get out the gate back in 2016. But now we are in 2021, and James Gunn, who was fresh off the heels of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, decided to join forces with DC and Warner Brothers to make The Suicide Squad, a sort of sequel slash reboot. You don't technically need to have watched the original movie because not a lot of things transition between the two movies, so you don't necessarily need to have seen the original to understand this one. And the thing is that this film actually acknowledges that by saying, okay, well, we don't really need to do a lot of setup with this. We could just go straight into it, and the information will lead you along the way. Like, if you have a familiar knowledge of what the original Suicide Squad is, they'll give you brief refreshers towards the beginning of this new film, and then they just run with it. And it's pretty well paced for the most part. I think for me, though, the first act is a little bit rough to get through, but after that first act, it really picks up with the second and really finishes well in the third act. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't go into this film expecting some, like, big revolutionary film that's going to change the way we see comic book movies. Now, I'm not going to go into the full details of the plot or what didn't make sense, because that would kind of ruin the fun with the film, but there are some people I would like to give some praise for in this movie. First off, Margot Robbie, once again, killing it as Harley Quinn. I think she has, like, really grown over the years into this role, and I don't think I could ever see another Harley Quinn in live action. Margot Robbie is just terrific in this movie. Even though she's not necessarily the biggest presence in the movie, her scenes are, like, pretty well done. I also think Idris Elba in this film does a pretty good job at Bloodsport. He's pretty well done. He's a good leader for the most part, and he's a terrific actor. He does a good job. John Cena as Peacemaker is at times hilarious, and at other times a little disturbing. Now, granted, I'm not familiar with some of these characters, but I do know Peacemaker, and it still is just kind of weird that we get Peacemaker in a movie. But I think the best character in this entire film has to be King Shark.
And?
Yes, that is your hand. Very good.
I mean, come on. He's voiced by Sylvester Stallone, of all people. And he just makes the character both menacing and just docile in nature. And it's the cutest thing, but also the most terrifying thing. Because, you know, I don't want the shark to eat me. I'd say all around, most of the cast does a pretty good job. And there isn't a lot of surprises I felt with the movie. Some of them were things like the commentary, the political commentary it does at times, but at the same time, because of the trailers, it really left almost nothing up to interpretation or expectations, I feel. So if you did pay attention to the trailers so long, there's almost nothing that's too surprising about the film going in, and I feel like that's the problem with the marketing. They needed to have something more, something bigger to show off, and they just kind of spoil, like, some of the biggest stuff in the movie. And that is kind of my one big criticism. But the movie itself isn't necessarily that perfect of a movie. I think for the most part it's fine. It's not. It's definitely way better than what I thought it was going to be, because like the original Suicide Squad just like lowers the expectations for me. But on the flip side of it, I had my hopes for James Gunn's film, because James Gunn is a terrific director and he knows exactly how to do team dynamics in this film, and he knows how to make characters have sympathetic backstories and to really visually show some of these characters' backstories. There's like one scene where they're on the bus and a character is talking about their backstory, and you could see within the window panel of the bus the backstory. So they're not exactly cutting back to a flashback, but rather using the visual language of like, you know, cinema and comic books to really show off like, you know, character backstories in a way that's very visually intriguing without the usual like, you know, cut like crossfade into the flashback and then crossfade out, like the typical kind of stuff. It just goes to show that like James Gunn knows how to tell the story and the editors know how to edit well. And I think with what James Gunn did with the Suicide Squad, they're really leaning into the idea that they are different from Marvel because they can do things differently than Marvel. Because in the MCU, for as much as I like the MCU, it is a franchise that is predicated on just doing the bare minimum in terms of showing off the comic booky type stuff. Like in the comics, they could do some really insane stuff and it somehow works. Like in the comics, for example, like the Falcon can actually talk to birds instead of using a drone. And I think that's, you know, it kind of takes away from the wacky, weird type of stuff that Marvel Comics is known for, and it just streamlines it all to satisfy mainstream audiences. Whereas DC is willing to go with the over-the-top, like, you know, gory, funny, lewd and crude type of movies to really distinguish themselves between what Marvel can't do and what DC can. Because Disney has its own mandates. It can't necessarily go over the top with deaths. It can't do all this stuff because Disney themselves does not want R-rated content. They just don't. And DC is willing to do that with franchises like the Suicide Squad, which I think works especially well with the Suicide Squad, considering that they're all villains for one thing, and it shows that there is this weird cartoony, like gory side to that franchise. But of course, I don't expect other movies in the DC lineup in the future to be as gory. You know, I don't expect the Flash movie to be R-rated. I really don't. And honestly, I don't want all of their DC films to be R-rated. But if they can show that there is a variety of ways to tell a story, there's definitely going to be a clear distinguishing factor between DC movies and Marvel movies from here on out. And I'm going to give the Suicide Squad a B+. Thank you guys so much for watching my review of the Suicide Squad. Have you seen it yet? What was your favorite part? What was your favorite character? Remember, no spoilers in the comment section. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more reviews in the future. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.